what is up? Shaatir here. आज की वीडियो में I want to speak about constraint. What is constraint? Constraint is rules, boundaries, restrictions, right? This is especially pertinent for artists and creators. Why? Because nobody likes boundaries on their creation. Everyone likes it to be as free and open as possible, especially when you are experimenting with what form is adequately yours. So उस time पे when someone imposes restrictions on you or asks you to adhere to a set of rules, it can seem very burdening, but a restrictive feel hota hai, right? But the bigger burden comes from having the freedom to do anything. When you have the freedom to do anything and be anything possible, anything at all, it is very easy to fall into analysis paralysis and be burdened by your choice. Ki main kya karu? Which is why, apprenticeships in art, restricting yourself to form, formal education, necessary boundaries are all ways to get to that place where, because you're constricted, the next logical step is to be creative, right? Often you've found that many people who say there is no boundaries on this, do whatever you want, end up with some kind of bullshit abstract piece of art or piece of creation and ask you to look at it from an experimental light. वो बोलते हैं कि यार ये जो मैंने बनाया बड़ा experimental सा है. It doesn't evoke a strong reaction in you, and oftentimes that abstractness, that lack of rules, is a small veil for complete lack of talent. And why does that happen? That happens when many of us engage in too much generality. Lately, because I've been experimenting with constraint myself, I found that is quite valuable. It is important that once you've done experimentation and you want to go to the next level in your craft, you place boundaries on what you can and cannot do, what you're willing to do and what you won't do, right? And also, when everything is permitted to you, how do you know you're any good? What is the actual switch from weekend amateur to true master of the craft, right? Something like that. Constraint. It is constraint. एक चीज तुमने notice करी होगी. The reason why people like Pandit Ravi Shankar were flawless at what they did is because they apprenticed themselves to the Indian classical music का जो भी school होता है, right? Trained in that. After being constrained by dogma and rule, were they able to master it and move to the next step जहाँ पे वो तोड़ सकते हैं. But if you get an amateur musician like myself who is not trained in the art and is only using his ability to hear and jam on the spot, I can best manage a semi-decent song, right? I'm not able to transcend and achieve that genius level that is characteristic of all great artists. ठीक है? That is why convention and constraint are necessary. और ये जो choice होती है ना, this choice to be something as opposed to anything and everything hurts first. It suffocates. Your ego fights a battle against it. The inner child in you, whatever that means, puts up a resistance saying ki fir I'm constricted. I'm no longer this thing that can flirt with multiple realities. I have to be this one thing. Well, I have found that once you deliberately choose what your sacrifice is and stop the horizontal exploration or at least reduce it and start with the vertical, beautiful things happen, including and most importantly, incremental improvement. जब तुम्हें पता है कि मेरे गेम के रूल्स अब डिफाइन हो गए हैं और ये मेरी कंस्ट्रेंट है, यू आर एबल टू ट्रैक प्रोग्रेस मच बेटर बिकॉज यू आर नो लॉन्गर स्प्लिट ऑफ इन मल्टीपल डायरेक्शंस. इंस्टेड यू हैव वन सेंट्रल फोकस. नाउ आई सी ऑल ऑफ दिस विद अ कैवियट. दिस इज नॉट फॉर पीपल who've just graduated high school, not for college students either. This is for someone who's pretty much understood different types of experimentation, जिसने कई सारे फील्ड्स के अंदर ऑलरेडी एक्सपेरिमेंट कर लिया है और इज करंटली डूइंग इट एंड वुड लाइक सम डिग्री ऑफ स्टेबिलिटी एंड जेन्युइन प्रोग्रेस इन वन फील्ड दैट दे कैन बी प्राउड ऑफ एंड कैन सी कि हाँ यहाँ रिजल्ट्स आ रहे हैं. इट इज़ फॉर दोज पीपल स्पेसिफिकली. एंड इवन विद दोज पीपल आई डू नॉट condemn experimenting entirely. I'm just saying if you're sick of being this so-called generalist, and I understand because I made a video on range, and you would like to have a seat at the table of experts from that field, the best way to do that is constrained. Let us use some examples to define what I mean. If you've not heard of Jack Butcher's visualize value, मैं insist करता हूँ उसको एक बार जाके देखो. Visualize value is this it started off with an Instagram Twitter page जहाँ पे एक डिज़ाइनर जैक बुचर ने एक कंस्ट्रेंट डाला कि I will share motivational self-help quotes or quotes around mental health, mental wealth, philosophy, self-improvement, all of that. But my constraint is I will only use black color. I will only use white for shapes and text. I will decide what my font is and I will stick to it. इस constraint को add करके decision making fatigue that comes with next time मेरे को अब ये color choose करना है या फिर अब मेरे को ये font choose करना है, that goes out of the window. When the box is tightly set, you can build a building, right? When the box is expanding as the building is being built, it is very possible that that building might crumble, right? Number one. So that is how he was able to grow it, sell multiple online products, have an aesthetic that pretty much all of the Western worlds and the English speaking world's internet recognizes, okay, and was able to iterate from that and scale because of using this simple constraint. Number two, a haiku, a poem. तुमने देखा होगा, there are numerous poems. There are poems that span 7-8 pages. There are poems that have multiple stanzas. There are poems that have different rhyme schemes. But the beauty of a haiku and why haikus are so popular all across the world is because they have constraint. 3 या 4 लाइनें depending on who you ask. That is all you have to write down something. And when you have that constraint, people whittle down everything else and just focus on the message. That is why when they hit you sharply. I've also experimented with that in my own poetry, realizing that I will only use simple words and I will ensure at least 3 or 4 words rhyme. Again, my constraint is still a bit loose, but the haiku is just spot on in that. जब constraint इतना ज़्यादा है, you're bound to come across genius, right? So that is the power of constraint. Another example, and this is an example that I saw in my own life. Recently, I went to the Bangla Sahib Gurdwara, और उस गुरुद्वारे में जाके मैं notice करा, you know, there are musicians in the Gurdwara, and what they do is they recite lines from the Guru Granth Sahib, and that runs on for the entire day. There are usually 3 guys who do that. The tabla player, I noticed, had to be in sync with the guy who was singing or reciting, right? Because this is a religious place of worship, there isn't a scope to say experiment, right? He is constrained by form. Form है devotional religious recitation, और मेरे को उसके अंदर I have to apprentice myself to it. But because he is so constrained, the places where the recitation is a bit dull, या फिर dull भी नहीं बोलूँगा, I'd say is slower, right, subtle, he has to make sure that the beat remains constant और वो उसके अंदर थोड़ा सा solo करे. So just seeing that slight addition of beauty to the constraint of playing tabla for a gurdwara is a natural example of constraint. And that constraint allows you to use as less as possible to have as much impact as possible. ठीक है? Again, to sum it up, artists have difficulty with freedom. As a self-proclaimed artist, although I understand if some of you feel that's not the case, I understand the dangers of having too much freedom. ठीक है? When you're anything, there is nothing that defines you. In a way, you're omnipotent, omnidescribable, and that's not a good solution going into sincere and serious work. So to change the I'm still figuring it out to I'm this concrete thing, constraint needs to be added to your life. ठीक है? And if you watch the writing videos, that is why I insist on sharp writing and simple language. In a way, that's my deliberate apprenticeship to this form. I hope this helps, and let me know if you are adding constraint to your own life. And then maybe visit this video after a month and see what that does to you. Say if you work out and you're like, मैं कुछ भी कर लेता हूँ, try sticking to a specific routine. See what that does for you. If you think I can write about anything, try writing only listicles for a month. If you think you are an artist, an entrepreneur, a creator, a coder, a painter, whatever, try sticking to one of those arbitrary labels and then hyper define yourself. I know this comes off as contradictory advice to the Range video, where I asked you all, based on the summary of the book Range by David Epstein, to be a generalist. But I understand that there are many of you on this journey, including myself, who feel that constraint brings with itself both genius and discipline, something you need on your journey when you're advancing from amateur to a moderate level player, or even like the beginnings of what a master looks like. Okay? I hope this video helps you. Let me know in the comments what you felt, and share, subscribe करना बिल्कुल मत भूलना, like तो करते ही रहना. See you in the next one. Shaatir out.